Welcome to the Heartland Journal's Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and pass it around. We only grow with your help. Thanks for doing it. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today and the world with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community, people making a positive change in our community, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we're talking with special guests Bobby and Alan Anderson. Risen Hearts is dedicated to providing holistic healing and practical support to the IDF community and to mobilizing Christians to join with them in serving Israeli Defense Forces, to stand united with Israel, serving her people and fostering hope and new life in the aftermath of October 7th and ongoing conflict. Risen Hearts brings together Christian and Jewish Americans with a unified call to serve Israelis in the aftermath of the October 7th terrorist attack. They stand beside Israel to strengthen her people by providing practical and emotional support to the IDF community so deeply impacted by an ongoing war. As ambassadors of truth, Risen Hearts illuminates the reality in which Israelis live today. They boldly share their testimonies and shed light on why Israel is relevant and important, with an emphasis on bringing this message to Christians. As Christians demonstrate love to Israelis and the Jewish people, the light of Yeshua shines through them. Risen Hearts invites battle-weary and injured IDF veterans to the U.S. for a time of respite and healing. Additionally, we offer support to Israel visiting and providing for wounded veterans and their families, sowing encouragement, life, and hope wherever they go. Ali and Bobby Anderson are RisenHeart.org's founders. Let's get to know them and find out why they took on this mission to comfort, yes, comfort my people, says your God, Isaiah 40:11.
Hello, Allie. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for coming in here. Bobby, how are you?
Steve, good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I get the sense you want to pray over this conversation. You want to do a quick prayer?
Yes, Steve, actually, thank you. That's crazy. I was thinking that. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this opportunity and this time. And we just submit it before you, God. And we ask that your Holy Spirit would fill our mouths and we would speak only what you tell us to speak and nothing more. And that this podcast episode would be used by you powerfully for your kingdom. In the name of Yeshua, amen.
Amen. Thank you. How'd y'all meet?
We were both going to junior college in Sonoma County, Northern California. And we were actually introduced by a mutual friend that we both grew up with.
Yeah.
Kind of a lot in the same circles. Don't think we ever met each other's children, but we probably did at some point. So
we were from the same town, but we met at the right time, like the perfect time.
What year was it?
2005?
Yeah.
Okay.
Northern California.
20 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. Had he met me even 6 months prior, he wouldn't have wanted to touch me.
It was a good time for me, too. I'd got out of the military
timing.
and had some time to decompress in college. And so, it was a good time that we met.
What branch of the military were you in?
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps. Okay. Thank you for your service. And thank you for your service, because this is a pretty amazing story here. 3 boys.
Yeah,
Are they helping you out in this mission, or are they too young? Where are they?
No, they are. One of them's about 14, and then we have a 12 and a 10-year-old. And they've actually
Busy
been
ages. Okay.
Yeah, we're the sports, the football, and the baseball, and the guitar lessons, and all this stuff. But they are supportive and they're encouraging to us.
Are they on the path towards military too?
I don't know.
You never know.
Too young to know?
I'd be supportive of it. I don't know.
Okay.
You never know.
Pays well, so to speak. So what motivated you to get active in American-Israeli relations?
It's really a supernatural story, Steve, honestly. I would say that I always had a desire to visit Israel as a biblical tourist, but no real heart for the nation or the people, to be honest with you. And then a series of things happened. God did a series of miraculous things. For one, I had been really sick for like 12 years with lupus and Lyme's disease. And so because of that, my immune system just wasn't functioning properly. And I had just a host of infectious diseases, one after the other. And it was really debilitating. So we were trying to juggle raising children and all of life with that. And I reached a point of true despair, I would say, about 3 years ago. And I really, because at the time I was becoming so weak that I was having trouble even like lifting a glass of water to my lips. Sometimes Bobby would have to help me with a lot of things. We didn't know if we'd have to hire like someone to come in the home to help us. And so I cried out to God for healing. And he had told me, if you fast for 30 days, Allie, I will heal you. And that's probably a whole nother podcast episode. But ultimately, it was a question of faith. Did I really believe that God spoke to me very specifically? And did I really believe that he was still the miracle God of the Bible? That's what it came down to. And so ultimately, I did fast for 30 days. And it was a great test of faith throughout that time because I actually got sicker each day and not better. And in fact, it was almost as if every infection I had ever battled and recovered from came back at me all at once. I think it was a tremendous spiritual battle. I know it was. And so night 30, I go to sleep and I feel like I'm dying, like actually dying. But the next morning I woke up, he had actually left his cell phone on the bed and I heard his truck start. I heard him leaving for work.
On my way to work kind of earlier in the morning.
Yeah. And I thought, oh gosh. And I jumped out of bed and I ran to his truck with his phone. And while I was running, I realized I was running and I had been healed. There's more to that story, so much more. But really, that was actually the beginning of the Israel thing because I wouldn't have had the faith to do this, we wouldn't have had the faith together to do this had I not gone through that. And had I not...
Or at that point, the physical ability to do so, to do what, she's been able to do.
So you were basically an invalid, and all of a sudden, after 30 days, on the 31st day,
I was healed.
Born again, you were healed.
Yeah, and I it's true. I wouldn't have been able to go to Israel. I wouldn't have had the energy that this project has taken, but I wouldn't have had the faith and the courage either. I know that. So
were you born in a religious household? Were you both?
Yeah, we were both brought up in, non-denominational Christian homes, two loving parents, strong believers.
Yeah.
You're wearing a Star of David. Did you convert to Judaism?
My God, David. I got this on my first trip to Israel. It's I tell everybody, it's the only piece of jewelry that the Lord ever told me to buy.
Oh, okay. All right.
Or me, Steve.
Yeah.
You had to pay for it, or somebody.
Right.
Okay.
But it's my heart is with Israel, and that's, I think, why I wear this every day. And I also wear it to show that I stand with the Jewish people. I think that's important in this time. So, about 7 months after I was healed, or maybe 6 months after October 7th happened. And when October 7th happened, I knew it was a very big deal and it was an upsetting thing. I didn't understand why it was such a big deal to me personally. Like I was putting
you hadn't been to Israel prior to that?
No. I was, again, Israel wasn't even on my radar. I was putting our kids to bed at night and getting into bed and crying and interceding for the hostages and for the soldiers in Israel and for the people of Israel. And it was like, what's going on? Why am I so affected by this? Looking back, the Lord was beginning something.
I think for both of us, as far as Israel's concerned, I think we kind of grew up, with the belief that Israel's a strong U.S. ally in the Middle East. It's part, one of the, Abraham religions, those kind of things, but kind of ambivalent, I think, to the people of Israel.
Did you interact with IDF soldiers in your service in the Marines?
A little bit, but very, very briefly.
But you knew of them. You were
mostly
aware of
in
them.
training environments. Yeah,
you knew how good they were.
Yeah. We viewed them as a elite unit, elite force. But as far as just the Jewish people in general and the people of Israel, we were kind of ambivalent. I think from a spiritual and political standpoint, in support, but not really burdened by
Yeah.
what they've gone
I
through.
would
American
say-
ally over there, something
Right.
else, somebody else's issue
Yeah.
until this. So was
So
this issue at all for you, or did Allie actually drag you kind of into this?
She'll get into this, but
Let's go.
It I think initially, and she can share this. She initially, came to me and said, I want to go to Israel, and my first reaction was, why? They're in the middle of a war right now. What are you thinking? So I didn't get it. In the beginning, it didn't make sense to me. I didn't feel like this is where God was calling me, initially. But after she told me, hey, babe, I want to go to Israel. I want to do some kind of service. I want to help. Kind of had that reaction. And I said, well, let me pray about it. And so I prayed about it. And she said, 24 hours later, I said, okay.
It was like a 24-hour
Yeah.
change.
So when was the
Right.
first time you went to Israel?
I went in January of 24, so just a few months after October 7th.
And how many times have you been since today?
I returned it twice. I returned again about 5 months after that, and then we were supposed to go in June, but we were supposed to land 2 days after this, war with Iran broke out, and so of course our flights were all canceled, and there was no way for us to get into the country for weeks, and our window closed as far as childcare went. So
And that was going to be my first time.
Yeah,
so
that was a big
disappointing.
deal.
So you went once right after.
Yes.
You were going to go a second time together, but it got canceled.
I went once.
She-
I went
she went
twice,
second.
You went twice,
and then the third
The third time would have been the charm.
So,
okay.
and God, then I was baptized about 6 weeks after October 7th, maybe 7 weeks after October 7th, which I had never been. Very interesting.
Here in Nashville?
Here in Nashville, grew up in a Christian home for whatever reason, was never baptized. When I kind of alluded to this earlier, but in my late teens and early 20s, I was off the rails, just had totally rejected God, living in Las Vegas, circling the drain, and God literally saved my life and brought me back to him. Was not baptized then either for some reason. The Lord began to convict me about being baptized in a serious way, and so I was baptized about 6-7 weeks after October 7th. It was the very next morning that I got this call from the Lord. I woke up and I heard him say, "The time is short and the workers are few. Go to Israel." And that's what
From
precipitated.
Sin City to the Holy Land.
Yeah.
You can't really get more poetic than that.
No. And my baptism, importantly, you should know, unbeknownst to me at the time, I got up and I shared my testimony and I was baptized. I didn't realize that our church had made a kind of a audible decision last minute to bring an Israeli family and some other Israelis that had been attacked on October 7th in to share their story of survival. So they were sitting in the front rows listening to my testimony and my
First
baptism.
time any of these folks had ever been in a Christian church at all.
Some of
First
them,
time
yeah.
they'd
So
ever
this is
seen a
Conduit.
baptism.
Conduit, yeah.
I was in the crowd of that.
Yeah.
I know this story.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay,
even
yeah.
before today. So,
Okay.
yeah, no, it was amazing.
So God was doing
The
something
daughters
even
were
then.
up there.
Yeah.
They didn't even know. They had never met Christian
Yeah.
people before at all. They're kind of like, don't they hate us? Like, what's
Yeah.
the deal here? Why is this friendly and nice?
And see, when I sat down for my baptism, one of those teenage daughters turned and looked me in the eyes. And the Lord said to me, "You'll look in those eyes again." I had no concept of what he was talking about at that moment. But the next day, I wake up and there's this go to Israel call. 7 weeks later, I'm headed to Israel. And who did I go to visit? That family was one of the families. And I did look in those eyes again.
So what were your impressions on the ground when you got to Israel?
It is just a nation in trauma and in grief. They're a very resilient people, the Jewish people, in a way that I've never seen before. That's a legacy of overcoming persecution. That those are their roots. But just immense grief and trauma, really, and sadness, and some of I was doing different service projects, and I can give you one little story that kind of highlights things. We were at the Sea of Galilee, and there was a little gift shop there, and we really were serving most of the time with these very small windows of time for us to do a little sightseeing, or like for a couple of hours here or there. But they had said to us, the tour leaders, run in the gift shop real quick and get some stuff for your kids back home. This is your only chance on this trip. So I go in and I see this very regal gentleman, Israeli gentleman, standing there. And I said, do you know where the gift shop is? And
this is in January, following
just
October
after October 7th.
So
and
only a few months.
He just looked at me and he said, the gift shop? He said, do you have any idea that we're in a war and you're asking me where the gift shop is? He was so offended. And it was one of those moments where you're like, whoosh, shooting prayers up to God, help, help me. And the Lord just said to me, tell him why you're here, Allie. Tell him why you're really here. And so I told him, I said, oh, I'm not actually a tourist. And he said, oh, well, why are you here then? And so I told him my story thus far. And I told him, and he said, well, what kinds of things have you been doing then? He was very, almost like challenging me a little bit. I said, oh, well, we went to a makeshift military base kind of a thing right outside of Gaza. And we served like 8,000 hamburgers to soldiers. We put together a barbecue for families and, so some of the kibbutzes that were really impacted. We helped farmers that, their farms have been abandoned. These kibbutzim along the Gaza envelope were just ghost towns, right? Well, they're agricultural communities there that depend on workers to be able to work the land. They're certainly not having any Palestinians coming in from Gaza to help them with that. So we would help farmers and things. So I'm telling him this, and I could see this wall that had been around him just crumbling down. It melted, and he said to me, he just pulled me into this big hug, and he had tears running down his face, and he just hugged me and he said, thank you for coming. And so I think I encountered that a lot, like a protective kind of hardness, but not too easy or not too difficult to penetrate. As soon as they realize that you are there with no ulterior motives, just to show them love. And that's where, as a side note, what the enemy has intended for evil, God is using it for good. He's using it to open hearts. And
Bobby, being a military guy, had you ever seen anything like it?
Yeah, I think part of this really that kind of brought me full circle, at least, into what Allie had been called to, I think was, my experience in the military. I enlisted in 2000, which, if you remember, that was pre 9/11. So it was during the peacetime. I graduated high school, joined the Marine Corps. I was in a light armor reconnaissance unit, infantry unit. That's what I wanted to do. Wanted to, be the best of the best, all that. I remember seeing the Marine Corps commercials on TV in the 90s.
Join the Marines, see the world.
Yeah, exactly. Slaying dragons, NCO sword, things like that. So that's what I did. And then 9/11 happened, of course. And we were part of a Marine Expeditionary Unit, it's basically the Marine Corps kind of condensed down into 3 battleship groups. So you have an air wing, you have infantry, you have logistics, everything. And so we got deployed. The initial plan was going straight to Afghanistan, and then powers that be decided to keep us just mobile kind of throughout the Western Pacific area. Got to experience some cool, reconnaissance missions and things, but never went into combat at all during that deployment. Came home, and it would have been the end of 2002. And then that's kind of when the Iraq war, rumors of war started heating up. And so my unit wound up getting attached to the 1st Marine Division, and we got deployed back to Iraq. We were in Kuwait for about a month. And then my unit was one of the first units that went into Iraq, actually, on the initial invasion in 2003. And
there was a HBO series about that, Killer Generation.
Generation Kill?
Generation Kill,
yeah. So my unit,
guys.
Yeah, my unit was actually, if you watch that show, they reference War Pig, and that was actually my company. So it was about 50 of us, and we got attached to 1st Recon Battalion, which is what that story's about. So yeah, but
tip of the spear.
Yeah, exactly. That was our motto, at least. That's what we told ourselves. But so
he's a bad mamma jamma.
So we did. We were involved in pretty significant combat on that deployment. Wound up having some friends, sadly get killed. Came home after that one. I was scheduled to get out of the Marine Corps in 2004, and I decided to, just end my active service at that time, honorably discharged. But they decided to have me deploy one further time in the beginning of 2004. So that was a little bit shorter deployment. It was about 5 months. So went back again to Iraq. I was in Al Qaim, which is kind of right on the Syrian border where the Euphrates River runs into Syria. And that was heavier combat on that one. Lost several more friends, had a lot that got pretty significantly injured. And then I was a vehicle commander at the time, so I was in charge of a vehicle with about 7 guys under me, and then just in charge of that vehicle, kind of similar to like a Bradley vehicle, if you know what that is, except it has wheels. And so the sergeant who actually, I was a sergeant at the time, who replaced me when I got out, he had I think he had re-enlisted, took over my vehicle, and he actually wound up getting killed after I had returned. And so I think, kind of coming back to this ministry, I think a lot of the guys who I served with, I've even, dealt with some things on my own. The trauma, that you go through, a lot of substance abuse, a lot of PTSD, a lot of depression, anxiety, things like that. I've seen a lot of my guys I served with really, really struggle with that. And so I think, in my heart, I've always had this calling to be part of helping these guys, whether it be some type of therapy or just support. And I never really acted on it. I never really took that up. But it's always been something that's been inside me. I've wanted to be part of. And so I think that, when Allie kind of had this calling for, at first it was kind of confusing to me. It's like, why Israel? Why now? Why this? We have 3 young boys. I have my career.
I'm a veteran homeless in America. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So what
And
was
so,
the answer?
but I think it just really came kind of full circle with, okay, we're being called to minister to and support IDF soldiers who have had a similar experience to mine.
Do they have a similar system over there, like a VA, where they can get therapy, or are they expected to be John Wayne and just get over it?
I
move
think
on?
they do.
They do.
Yeah.
There's still
I'm not
a
sure
lot
the
that falls
specifics,
through the
but-
cracks.
They haven't been helpful for your alternative resource, so to speak. Like, have they reached out to you to say, "Hey, you're doing a great job. Can we help you do more of it here for us in Israel?"
No.
Okay.
No
So
one's
you're just doing it
reached
solo at the
out. I
moment.
think there's a lot of lack, and I think the needs are just so huge. I mean, this is a very small nation that deployed, 350,000 soldiers all at one time. That's tremendous. There's like only 9-10 million people that live in the entire nation of Israel. So this is a bloody war. It's a violent war, and it was on the heels of this brutal and unprecedented attack. We have no concept for that in the U.S. really. I mean, if our southern border was infiltrated, and we had the same percentage wise, a number of Americans slaughtered and all. Just the trauma of that in and of itself is so tremendous. So you don't just have soldiers with PTSD, you have civilians with PTSD, and so I think that they need there's plenty of room in this space. And interestingly, actually, and this is cool because it shows that God is really behind this. But we've met, even just in the last couple months, different people that feel called to do the same thing that we're called to do, that are also bringing soldiers or working to bring soldiers, IDF soldiers, to the U.S. for these respite programs. And they had the call came to them around the same time it came to us. It's very interesting. It's like, and those are just people we know. So what is God doing and why? But He's
trying
doing
to bring
it.
the international community on board because this was
Right.
so bad. There's a 47-minute movie out and about called Bearing Witness to the October 7th Massacre, which is really just a file title, but that's what they call it. They held screenings of the film for national and international journalists, foreign diplomats, and Hollywood executives. I had to see it for journalism. My friend Ari Hoffman is a Jewish radio host in Seattle. He saw it. Vincent Cavallari, he saw it. He was with me with the Mill Creek View and still writes for me today. I wish I didn't see it, to be honest, but I wish even more it didn't happen. It was kind of the first time rape, I could tell, was used as a weapon in, maybe ever. But you hear about the Gazans from that movie that beheaded an Israeli with a garden hoe. We're talking barbaric stuff. And he called his mom to brag about it right then and there, and she was all proud of it. I mean, it's another world. We just don't understand it. Did either of you happen to see that movie?
We did.
What are your impressions of it?
Brutal. There's clearly a demonic presence that just displayed itself, on that day. I feel like that's the only way. Typical human behavior in warfare.
Did you see it?
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to. It's difficult to see those things.
It is. They showed it to a few Hollywood folks at the Cannes Film Festival, but I don't think enough people wanted to see it. I don't blame them. I mean, it's terrible. It's like watching literally a real live snuff film, but now they don't believe it. It's sort of like Holocaust denial. Like if you don't read a book and if you don't actually watch a documentary and you just assume, well, that couldn't have possibly happened. Men can't be that inhumane to man. Well, yes, they can. So, Allie, tell us what you know actually happened on October 7th.
I know that there was something like 150 or 160 breaches of the wall between Gaza and Israel. I know that 1,162 or 3 people were killed. I know that women were raped. I know that babies were killed. I know that there were, 161, I might be off by a number or two, 251 hostages taken.
50 still?
Yes. I mean, these things are unimaginable. I mean, people burned alive, the most brutal and truly demonic ways that you could kill someone. I think that's the only way any of this even makes sense, is in viewing it through a spiritual lens. When
and
you
the only way that a human can do that is if they believe the enemy isn't human. And so obviously these fighters, these warriors, these Hamas terrorists were raised and believed and either on drugs or just whatever, brainwashed to believe that the neighbors across the way, the Israelis across the way, weren't human beings. They were bugs. They were cockroaches. They could be decapitated by a garden hoe.
When you hear them calling their parents, I've heard these recordings, calling their parents, Mom, Dad, I killed whatever, seven,
I won the football game with the winning touchdowns. Like it's kind of the equivalent of that.
Right. I mean, that says a lot. So, and I think one of the aspects of this war and this whole thing that's happened with Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and Iran, all of it, it's this. It's a war. It's a misinformation campaign that's been leveled against the Jewish people and Israel. It's a war of messaging. And I saw firsthand that has had a compounding effect on Israeli and Jewish folks' trauma. I saw that. I remember...
It's like being a victim and not being believed.
Yes. I remember being in... I was in Judea, so, the West Bank, on one of the trips, and I had been able to get some gear together for reservists that were lacking: tactical helmets, bulletproof vests.
Because in the IDF, the IDF itself, active duty, are pretty well equipped, kind of like we talked about. They're, an excellent fighting force. But there's also 250,000 reservists.
350,000 reservists.
Actually, I have that statistic here. I'll just throw it out there for everybody, if I can find it. Yes. So 634,500 military personnel under its command. Active is only 169,500. Reserve, 465,000 soldiers. Everyone's got an M16 at home. And Iran has 800,000. And of course, no women. Unlike Israel, which actually I want to get into that since I have an experienced woman here about this. So based on recruiting data between 2012 and 2024, the number of female combat soldiers in the IDF increased tenfold. As of May 2025, women constituted 21% of the IDF's combat force, Would you say women are particularly motivated after seeing the atrocities that Gazans and Hamas did to women?
I think so. And I think they're, quite frankly, a different breed than we are
Yeah.
here. I mean, I've watched, when you are Allie Anderson and you have a ministry like we do, X and Facebook, they think that the algorithms are telling them that I'm a young IDF soldier, Israeli IDF soldier. So I see all of that kind of content, and I see these, hidden camera footage of people just dining in Tel Aviv, 6 months ago, and a terrorist walks up and just starts stabbing people that are sitting out on a patio. I mean, this is their reality, right? This is what happens to them on a regular basis, stabbing people on the patio and takes off running while everybody goes after him. It was a woman in the street that shot and killed that guy. Just a woman who had a gun in her purse, and she shot and killed him. I guarantee you, she fulfilled her IDF service, and she's well trained. And that's something that I just don't think. I'm certainly not toting and ready to do that here, and I don't have to. It's not even in my on my radar, right? But
I think that is something that is different about Israel's situation compared to like my experience. It's like we would get deployed, right? And we're thousands of miles away, right? And we do our deployment, and then we come home, right? And we're safe. I live in Sonoma County, California, Northern California, a little town. I'm not worried about the Mujahideen or whoever I was fighting thousands of miles away dropping a rocket on my mom's house, right? That's not a concern of mine. Right. Whereas these guys, they come home, right? They're home. They're in their safe place, but it's not
still
really
a war zone.
It's a hypervigilance, and it's exhausting. And I want to say too that back to, that soldier that I met as I was handing off the gear in Judea, I could see right off the bat he came to meet me right outside this base. We couldn't enter the military base as we were supposed to, actually, because a soldier had been killed. So we're standing outside this base, and he's right off the bat. I just want you to know that we're not trying to harm the people of Gaza. We're doing everything we can to try to not hurt them. We care about them, and he was just almost desperately trying to convince me, and going kind of on and on. And I just said to him, I don't want to say his name, but Devere, I'll make up a name, Devere. I believe you. Like, I believe you. And when I said that to him, he shuddered. He went, like I could see he needed to hear that. He needed to hear that. And the Lord really impressed upon me, because, I would go to hospitals in Israel and visit and sit with wounded soldiers that were missing both of their legs. Some of them were missing both of their legs, one arm, and a nose. I mean, horrific injury, horrific. And I felt that the part of what I was meant to say to them was, I know that you are fighting an honorable war, and I know that you're fighting it honorably. And that's not to say that there's not a bad actor here or there, right? There's always that in any military. But I really came to see and learn that Israelis have this tremendous, ethos of life. They value life in a way, perhaps even more than I've ever seen in an American. They truly have a desire to live peaceably right alongside people that are different than them. They don't want to hurt civilians. They don't want to hurt anyone unnecessarily. They are actually trained to such a degree that they put their own lives at risk before they would hurt a civilian. Mm-hmm. And so
they actually have a toast that says, l'chaim, to life, which is exactly. To life. It happened to be my father's name too. It's hard to trust numbers coming out of there, but UN Women estimates that more than 28,000 women and girls have been killed in Gaza since the beginning of the war in October 2023. Again, hard to trust, but the BBC said the UN's Human Rights Office has condemned the high number of civilians killed in the war in Gaza, saying its analysis shows close to 70% of verified victims over a 6-month period were women and children. Its analysis found around 44% of verified victims were children and 26% women. It's a big gap, by the way. The ages most represented among the dead were 5 to 9 years old. About 80% of victims were killed in residential buildings or similar housing, the agency added. But again, UN Human Rights Office has been known to not just lie, but hate Israel. So what do you think? Is Israel killing a lot of civilians, giving credibility to the other side, calling it a genocide, like Ilhan Omar and Bernie Sanders here at home, or are they just wrong?
And I think the tactics that are used by, Hamas, it makes it impossible to, there may be some, collateral damage, which is tragic, it really is in any war. But, my question is, what should Israel have done after October 7th, based on the circumstances of the way in which Hamas conducts their warfare, right? They hide weapon caches underneath.
Traditionally, the world condemns them. They stop. They let the other side regroup, and they come back and have to deal with it again 5 years later.
Right.
They don't want. Right. I think Israel. They can't deal with this again in 5 years. They just can't, and I can see that. I know. I've met so many people there. They can't handle it.
So this was a bridge too far. They literally went too far with what they did, and so
and you have the opposite among Hamas. They don't value life. They actually value martyrdom, right?
Yeah, right.
And so it's a blessing to and I'm not going to speak for all Muslim women, but many of them that are supportive of this hatred towards Israel, it's a blessing to kill Israelis in their minds.
They actually trade trading cards for their martyrs, like we would do baseball heroes like Babe Ruth or Ted Williams. They literally have Hamas killers as their idols or whatnot, and it's a hopeless situation.
It's taught to the children in the schools, and so I think because of the information that I'm privy to and that I'm seeing, there's just so much misinformation, and you have to, again, I think, view the news through a spiritual lens. I think sometimes we don't like that. We want to have spiritual things be separate from other things that are in the physical realm, but they're just not. They're all woven together. And you have an enemy of Israel who is the enemy of God, who is on a campaign of terror himself against this people. We know he uses the media to espouse lies and all sorts of propaganda. And why wouldn't he be doing that in this case? Why wouldn't he? He is doing that.
He would. It's the ultimate battle.
Right.
And I don't want to draw a moral equivalency, but they killed 1,200 innocent people in Israel and took 251 hostages back to Gaza, still have 50. No excuse. That is evil. But 28,000 women, or let's just say they're lying and it's half, 14,000 women is a lot of retaliation. Do you think Israel might lose the moral high ground if the pictures keep coming out of leveled buildings and streets full of rubble, or are they justified?
I'll tell you something. I think that it's at some point it could get more and more difficult to stand beside Israel. It just may. I mean, really, even with us, we aren't here to champion the Israeli government. We are doing what we're doing because God has put a love for us within us, for the Jewish people and for the people of Israel. Why is that love? Did he put that love in us? Because he has that love for them. It's evidence of his great love for them. He has plans for those people, and he has purposes he wants to accomplish in them and for them and through them. And he's using people like us and others that we know to do that. So, it is difficult to know exact numbers and the truth. I can tell you that I've spoken to an awful lot of IDF soldiers and developed friendships and relationships with these people. And, the people that I'm meeting are loving people. They have children and families of their own. They don't want to hurt a child. They just don't. They don't want to kill a woman. They don't. They don't want to be killed. And, as Bobby, pointed out, when Hamas is hiding all their weapons caches and doing operations from inside of schools and hospitals and mosques and daycares and who is then responsible? Who bears the responsibility for blood on their heads? Is it Israel or is it Hamas?
Yeah, they're using human shields, so
right.
Absolutely they are. They're not even a conventional fighting force where you would say, like, well, there's a uniform, so we can. They're going after civilians, like you said, stabbing them in cafes. So my concern, obviously, because I live here and I'm observing news all the time, things like this, the Toronto International Film Festival and the filmmaker behind a documentary about the Hamas attack in Israel on October 7, 2023, say they have reached an agreement and the doc will screen at the festival next month, The Road Between Us, The Ultimate Rescue. It follows retired Israeli General Noam Tibbon's mission to rescue his family during the Hamas attacks, during which 1,200 people were killed and more than 250 hostages were taken. Festival organizers said they pulled the documentary because it didn't meet certain requirements around security concerns and, quote, legal clearance of all footage. What do you make of the international disdain for that little country, Israel? And the reason I mentioned that movie is they didn't want to show it, right? They're just like, no, people want to see it. It may be popular. We just aren't going to allow it because we got our head in our sands because Israel is a pariah. They get treated
I think a lot of it comes back to the spiritual battle that's going on right now. I think it's there's a demonic force that is trying to influence people to hate Israel. And if you look back historically, there's never been a people from Abraham, if we agree on that historically, that has been more persecuted, more disdained by the nations than Israel. And that continues.
Yet still persists.
And still persists. They're
Right.
probably the only people who has maintained their language, their culture throughout millennia, right? Despite being scattered throughout the world at certain times, right? And so there's really no logical explanation for where this, hatred and disdain comes from. But yet it continues. So
Yeah.
I don't really have an answer other than
pretty ancient, yeah. And
We
it does,
see too.
when I see the institutions start in the beginning, everybody was unified. It's like after 9/11, all the Democrats and Republicans gathered together on the Capitol steps, and they all sang "God Bless America." And for 15 minutes, we were like the United States of America. And then 16 minutes later, they went at each other's throats again, back to the the tribalness of Democrats versus Republican, left versus right. Here, same thing. October 7th, I don't even remember 15 minutes. I mean, they were immediately saying, no, it's not true. We're going to deny it. They deserved it. Bibi Netanyahu looked the other way and allowed it because of Pfizer. I mean, who knows? It just became immediately conspiracy theorist haven. And you're right, it's tribal. But leading up to it, things were pretty good, pretty peaceful. The decision, by the way, sparked an international outcry, including from some Jewish groups and politicians. Have you seen this one? Have you seen this movie by chance? No, okay. But you are aware of, obviously, the political forces that immediately come out and try to not only put Israel in its place, but stop what you're trying to do. They don't want you to help IDF soldiers. The IDF soldiers, to them, are war criminals. It's like when Vietnam was over here. To our great shame, America has called our soldiers baby killers because of the news coverage. It was the news that did that. Do you think the IDF soldiers will get similar treatment since the press is doing the same thing to them back at home, or are they looked at as heroes?
Here in the U.S.?
There in Israel.
Oh, in Israel. No, they're looked at as heroes in Israel, and they are. I mean, we're bringing a group of 10 IDF soldiers to Jackson, Wyoming, to the Teton Mountains for a refuge retreat coming up here shortly. And these guys have been at war almost continuously since October 7th. And they're 35 to 40, early 40s, these guys. Every single one of them is married. Every one of them has children, some of them little children. One of the guys that's coming, I was reading on his application, he had a baby born on October 7th. 7 days later, he's in Gaza fighting. And he was part of that initial deployment to Gaza. So, wow. So these guys are very respected in Israel. And it's our prayer that they encounter that kind of respect and honor when they visit here. And and we're not giving too much information too about their visit because we don't want riffraff showing up, But,
oh yeah, all you need is protesters.
Right. But
There are terror cells loose in America because of the illegal immigration crisis. For all we know, they would show up and cause you trouble. So let me ask you this: I'm 55 years old almost. Bibi Netanyahu is 75. Bibi Netanyahu, he's been a leader in Israel since '96. MIT grad, fought in the Yom Kippur War. His brother died leading the raid on Entebbe, famous movie. If you haven't seen it, everyone should. Do people really think he'd set his country up to be slaughtered like that?
I think that some people do. I think there's great division within Israel. There was great division politically in Israel even leading up to October 7th. And we hear, from multiple friends in Israel that Bibi is very unpopular at this time. It's difficult to know, as you said. I mean, it's so difficult to know what's true. I do believe that God sets people up to be, quote, kings, right? He establishes rulers. A ruler can be someone who has no relationship himself with God and actually engage in all kinds of wickedness, and yet still be, because God is sovereign over all things, used by God in mighty ways. I mean, we could look at King Nebuchadnezzar for that, right? Mm-hmm. So
in that long span, he's been both. He's been David and he's been Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
He's a human being, failed as can be. But I don't think he's a traitor. I don't think he's
I don't think he is either.
I think there's a lot of at this point very difficult to explain circumstances. Tactically speaking, about what happened on October 7th.
That border was airtight the day before, so something happened.
I think there are a lot of big questions that, of course, whenever there's questions, conspiracy theories are going to fly. Of course, that's just how it is. But, from what we've heard, there's no merit to any argument that it was allowed or set up or anything like that.
I'd be more inclined to believe he has his own deep state, whereas we talk about that with Trump and the whole FBI thing. I mean, that border was airtight. A pigeon decides to flutter away on that border, they would have known it. And not that day, an entire army was able to invade. Somebody somewhere did something. I don't think it was the guy at the top. 30 hours.
It was
also, though, too, again, not to beat a dead horse, but I really think that this is indicative of a great spiritual battle. I think it was a tremendous spiritual attack that was made.
A biblical event more than a historic event,
right?
So to speak, yeah.
And I don't think that I know that God wasn't like, oh no, what's happening? Oh no. No, in his sovereignty, he has allowed this to happen. And we are seeing good that he's bringing from it. And I mean, that's some might say
the greater Israel, what would it be? Not a philosophy, but a prophecy is in there. So maybe we won't know until the time has come. But I suppose expanding the borders of Israel and getting some hostile forces separated out, right? Lebanon's done as far as Hezbollah in the north, and so is now Gaza with Hamas in the southwest. Jordan better mind their business because that's where they go next. Okay, so there's this famous picture of when Bibi met Palestinian President Arafat. It was September 4th, 1996. Shaking hands, these steely eyes looking at each other, and it led to the Wye River Memo 2 years later, which was kind of sort of a peace deal, but Palestinians never say yes, so it never happened. Do you think Israel did all they could before October 7th for peace, and there's just no dealing with these fundamentalists? Or could they, I would never say this, but I've heard it, they were asking for it. They were literally treating them so bad in that area that they were just saying, lash out at us so that we can retaliate heavily.
I don't think either of us are, historical, experts on, on those specific events, but I do feel like, at least the leadership currently in Gaza is there should be no Israel. There should be no nation of Israel.
Right.
This land should be completely ours, and we won't settle for anything less.
We won't stop until we wipe them off the map.
Every inch, yeah.
Every inch, yeah. From the river to the sea, right?
Yep.
I mean, truly. So you can't negotiate with that. There's just no negotiating. There's
Right.
I mean,
it's not like going on to the Nimitz and getting unconditional surrender after World War II or dropping Hiroshima bombs and, fighting conventional war. It's not that. It's literally a guerrilla terrorist war with not motivation, but they're not entitled to that land. I mean, read Genesis. It's not theirs. But okay.
Right.
October 7th happened in the southwest of the country. People don't grasp this, but Israel is only 263 miles north to south.
Right, it's tiny.
From here to Atlanta, 4-hour drive. You can't drive it in 4 hours, but it's that distance. Crow could fly that. So Hezbollah in the north in Lebanon, I just said, has these Fatah 110 missiles, which can reach 180 miles. So that's pretty deep, almost two-thirds or a third into Israel. Around 60,000 Israelis have been evacuated from cities and towns along Israel's northern border. I know you're focusing on the southwest, but this is the northern border. And about 74% have returned, so they're not even back to normal yet. What was the daily life like for Israelis living under constant missile attack?
I mean, when I was there, first of all, you had all these displaced families living in hotels in the central part of Israel, right, that can't go home. We live in Nashville now, but we came, as Bobby said, from Northern California, where we used to have these horrible fires. Over the last several years, it got worse, and we were evacuated a couple of times for 2 weeks with our kids. It is so disruptive.
I was in law enforcement at the time, so I stayed, but they evacuated.
Yeah, I evacuated with the kids, but it's so disruptive when you're not in your home and your children are not in their school and in their routine, and you aren't able to go to work, and you're kind of surviving. You're stuck in this stasis of survival. It's not real living, and it's very disorienting. And so,
bodies can't really handle that much anxiety 24/7.
Right. And then, those that do return, have you ever seen how quickly, like, if you were to just not take care of a playground for even a month or 2 months, like not mow it and tend to it, what happens to it?
It's called Seattle,
right?
But yeah.
Right.
Where I came from.
There you go. But so, you return to these places, there are homes that are bombed, that have, shelling in the sides of them and holes in the roof and buildings that are burned and everything's overgrown. And it's how jarring, how disorienting. And many of these people still don't feel safe for good reason. I understand it. Don't feel safe returning and building their lives. And okay, kids, let's move back in the house and play out in the street, and you can ride your bikes.
You
because
go back to the house
that
that your mother was killed in or your daughter was killed in.
And the reality is that rockets have continued to fly. I get rocket alerts on my phone. All day, every day.
You and I could
rockets.
move from Sonoma or Napa to end up in Nashville, and new life, new things, memories are nice, but that's 160 miles of a country. There is no moving away to unless you want to move to Nashville.
And really, there's threats on almost every border, and then you've got even Greta Thunberg coming in on a boat.
The flotilla.
So they're. I'm sure they feel surrounded in many ways.
So give us a little more about the morale of the IDF soldiers. Obviously, you bring them here. They're going through therapy. Like, you've had to have seen breakthroughs. Are they angry that they were attacked? And, that's obvious. But do they have a sense of being restrained now to go after the bad guys, and maybe they want to be unleashed on you even more? Like, what can you tell us about their feelings about constantly being on war footing when they're here going through therapy, let's call it?
Well,
are they going through therapy?
No,
they're very resilient. Do you want me to share what a couple of them said?
Yeah, about the. Well, let us say first that we've actually pivoted for now away from a therapy model after speaking with a lot of other experts in this lane that are doing what we do from Israel, like Jewish organizations that say send soldiers to Switzerland or Italy for respite. We began to realize that we couldn't just kind of drop them into a therapeutic setting, rip off some scabs, let's talk about trauma, and then send them home. That without like an ongoing framework to continue therapeutic, measures, that we actually might do more harm than good. And so for a minute there, I kind of spun out like, oh, okay, so what are we doing, Lord? And I had to come back to God and say, because I pursued that therapy for several months, trying to find the right therapist. And it just kept being one closed door after another. And so God said to me, Allie, what did I say to you when I gave you the vision for this project of bringing the soldiers to Wyoming? What was the word I spoke to you? And that word was refuge, a time of refuge. And so I began to study what is refuge in the biblical sense of the word. And that is really instead what we have modeled this program around is this time of safety, of rest, of peace. It's like they're in the cleft of God's hand. It's like he's put them in his hand. And there's no fear of a rocket. There's no fear of a terror stabbing. They can turn off. And read what some of them have said too.
One thing too, just to add,
What they call the R&R when you were in the military.
Right. Yeah, and one thing I was going to mention with that, some of the trauma that I've kind of experienced and had to work through, it's like some of the best therapy, right, that I've ever experienced is sitting with the guys who I was there with around a fire, right, smoking a cigar and having a bourbon. That is where you process things. And that's not for everyone, but that is truly a healing experience having that time away, Right. And so one
I know what I'll be doing tonight. Thank you. That was
good. It's Friday.
I almost drooled there.
One thing that was really awesome is, when we first were able to kind of identify who we were, going to want to invite, right? The actual unit. It was initially difficult to get this to happen, to get them to be released, right? Because they're, like Ali said, they're in this active deployment, right? And so without giving too many details, it was miraculous how they were able to get approved to come on this, right? And it's in addition to their normal leave that they'll be granted. So it's not going to be taken away from time from family, right? Which was
meaning they're going to be
us,
serving.
So.
They're actually serving right now in Lebanon. This next group of guys, and then they're going to come to the U.S. Like they've been given permission to come, and then they'll go right
in
back.
addition to their time that they'll normally get off.
And you have testimonials from them?
Yeah, so just a couple things that these guys shared. We kind of they had to do like a little application and just kind of a screening because we initially went back and forth. When we were discussing the therapy aspect, who are these guys going to be, right? What does our prime candidate look like? We narrowed down. We wanted to be from the same unit for kind of reasons I mentioned, but they needed to be a little bit more high functioning, right? We don't have the ability and the resources to bring, for example, amputees, right? So
not yet. Anyway.
We had them not yet. So we had them, kind of do a screening, and we, kind of peruse through everything, make sure they check the good boxes. But there was a section that, just said like, why do you want to come on this? What would you like to do? And so these are a couple things that they mentioned. Just thinking about the retreat is a huge push and something I feel I've needed for a long time. Another said, I think this is an incredible experience and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to care about nothing for a few days. And then one other said, I believe a program like this can help us cope with the difficult experiences of war we've been through in a meaningful and powerful journey together with the people who share these experiences with us. So those are some cool, things that they're looking forward to.
And they never would have been able to say that had you not done this. So There you go. I've got a few minutes left, 5 minutes left with you. The Times of Israel reported that Iran strikes killed 28 Israeli civilians and one off-duty soldier, caused 3,238 hospital injuries. Trump went ahead and dropped those bombs in Iran, flew halfway around the world and back to do it. Pretty amazing military success story. Do you think Iran is off the chessboard for a good long while now, or just laying in wait? And I know it's speculation, you don't have secret clearance or anything, but what do you think? Do you think Iran has been put in its place for a while, or are they just licking their wounds?
I think they've had the resources for, existential threat, removed for a little bit, but I mean, hasn't the Ayatollah vowed destruction of Israel? And so,
yeah, but all his generals are dead, so
right.
You can
so
say
that helps.
Shake my fist.
I think they'll try to regroup at some point. Like this isn't. It probably, if anything, has fueled their disdain for Israel
and us.
And us.
So a new chapter, not the end, of course. Qatar and the Muslim Brotherhood, very influential in American politics these days, very much against Israel and AIPAC. The big Jewish lobby in D.C. used to be the biggest. I don't know when we started peeling away from them, but all of a sudden, have you seen their influence in D.C. while you're trying to do your missions? Do you get involved in D.C. at all?
No. I haven't. Very, very grassrootsy, and we're still in the beginning of this thing, really. Steve, It's only been just since October 7th that Israel was even on our radar. So we're learning so much every day, and God has just brought us into so many new relationships. It's like this spider web of connectivity between us now, people in Wyoming, people in Israel, all over the place. But yeah, so we don't really have any connections in DC at all.
And we're, this thing has just been, brought on by the Holy Spirit. Allie's a homemaker. I'm a former cop, current real estate agent. So we don't know what we're doing, but we are following God. And it's been a while.
International relations, you will bump into DC and Israel and the Knesset and all the rest at some point. And I just want to ask Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they've been very outspoken critics of Israel in the Republican Party, which used to be rock solid for them. AOC, Tlaib, Omar, Bernie, big anti-Israel Dems. And of course, we have the college professors on campus, riots in support of Hamas. You had to see this. You were actually counterculture to them. That must cause you personal blowback at home and maybe even amongst your kids, because the kids are kind of trying to be hip and cool, and that was hip and cool for a summer. Have you noticed the climate of a turning against our greatest ally in the Middle East?
Yes, for sure.
Tell us about that.
And it's hard. It's hard to see. Surprising to see some of that in the church, in the Christian community. That just shocked the socks off of me when I first encountered it. I think I took it personally. But yeah, absolutely, we see that. There's just I think there's this flow, this vomit of rhetoric that people are exposed to all the time, and then an absence maybe, or a significant lack of the truth getting out there, and I think
a lot of apathy,
right.
Specifically in the church, and just
indifference,
misunderstanding, a lot of false information.
And I think too, I'm probably going to hurt a couple people's feelings with this, but you've got even Tucker Carlson. You got Candace Owens, who just went straight up anti-Semitic. You've got Tucker Carlson interviewing.
My theory on that, as an influencer myself of much smaller stature, is that they follow the trends.
Right.
And so they think, just like when she was with Blexit, her black exit versus Brexit, which was an English economic decision. I believe that's the deal, and I also think Qatar is funding both of them. But that's just me. I'll get more in trouble than you will, but
I just think that these folks specifically, who are their listeners, right? Largely a conservative base, obviously.
Populist, supposed to be populist.
Well, and a lot of Christians. There are a lot of Christians that listen to Tucker Carlson. There are a lot of Christians that listen to Candace Owens, and I think that they're having an impact. They are having an impact in some ways. Those who are going to the Lord for the truth and are going to the Lord. What is your heart, God? What do you say about Israel? What do you want my heart to be for Israel? Like, that's a really good question that Christians should be asking God. And had I asked it sooner, he probably would have told me this sooner, right? Because there's only one truth. God has only one answer to that question. And so if you ask him and you search the scriptures, God will speak to you, and you'll come to the same conclusion that we have, which is that God loves the Jewish people. He always has. And he loves the people of Israel. And he is mobilizing. He's raising up Christians to serve his chosen people in this time. And he has not forsaken Israel. We always challenge those of our Christian friends and family who don't really get the Israel piece and maybe feel that maybe they don't even realize it, but they've been influenced by replacement theology, right? Read Acts 9, 10, and 11. Romans 9, 10, 11. Read Romans 11. You can't get past it. It's his call is here.
One thing too is, there's this view of, it's like from the church, at least it's like, hey, Tel Aviv is like the gay capital of the world, right? Who's in a lot of control, like the porn industry, these kind of things, right? These are some things that
Canada.
Yeah, right. But, or the Israeli government are making decisions that we don't agree with, right? And
where they're corrupt
but
right.
That doesn't change the fact that we need to be the light, right? And so, there's countless countries that are, involved in all kinds of atrocious things, right? That doesn't mean that God's turned their back on them or they shouldn't be shown the love.
So one last question, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. But the Fertile Crescent includes countries like Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Palestine, whatever you want to call that, parts of Turkey and Iran. Most of the population in Iraq, Syria, and Jordan are, of course, Muslims. 1.77 million Muslims live in Israel. That's not a good idea, I guess, if you are a ethnocentric country of one religion only, because they, out of 7.2 million Jews total, 1.77 million are Muslims. So it's not even what they say it is, an apartheid state, so to speak. But Israel is the only Jewish majority country on earth. Do you think little Israel survives this? In 2025, the Israel Defense Forces had a total of 634,000 military personnel, and Iran has 800,000. And of course, we said no women. Do you think they're going to survive this era?
Israel?
Mm-hmm.
Israel will survive because the Lord says that they'll survive. I mean,
okay.
It's just, it's written.
Okay. So what's the future for Risen Hearts?
We're pumped about this Teton Refuge project. We're pumped to see what God brings from it, not just in the soldiers that are coming, but also in the relations that we've built with the Jewish community, not only in Wyoming, but in other places. And this friendship that is this deep connection and friendship that's formed between Christians and Jewish people through ministries like this.
Since October 7th.
Yeah, it's like fertile ground for the work of God is what it is. The Holy Spirit's up in there for sure.
It's like I always say, Christians are Jews. They just don't know it.
Yeah,
they just don't all embrace it or know it.
We talk about that. I had a moment.
Graphs, right?
Isaiah 49:22. This is what the sovereign Lord says. See, I will beckon to the Gentiles. I will lift up my banner to the peoples. They will bring your sons in their arms and carry your daughters on their shoulders. That's your mission, isn't it?
And did you know that was the scripture that I was going to read?
Oh, well, I didn't. No, I didn't. I forgot about that, actually.
Perfect.
Sorry, I stole your thunder.
No, you're fine.
It's all with the same guy. Well, Abby and Bobby, thank you for your time. We are at the end, so tell everyone where they can go find out more about you and, of course, Risen Hearts and social media.
Yeah. Well, we have our website, risenhearts.org, and you're welcome to shoot us an email or message us through there. And soon we're going to be developing like a social media presence. We haven't gotten to that yet, so but for now, our website's probably the best way to get in touch with us.
Which is?
risenhearts.org.
And I don't know why I keep terribly calling you Abby, but it's Allie, and it's only because my two L's out here are connected,
Don't
and so
worry.
it's my bad.
It's all good.
But no, it's Allie and Bobby, right?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, well, thanks again for coming on with us.
Yeah,
I'll be
thank
right back,
you.
everybody. Quick break.
Sing a song about the heartland, the only place I feel at home. Sing about the way a good man works until the daylight's gone.
Ooh, thanks for coming back. Heavy subject, but thank you. It's that time to remind everyone to please subscribe to heartlandjournal.com. That's how we grow, get great guests like this, and keep this content free. Now, the Heartland Journal News. Why Arab rulers aren't more vocal about Gaza as global outcry grows. The tragedy of Gaza, the destruction of Gaza, could really serve as a time bomb that implodes the Arab political order from within, said Fawaz Gergis, professor of international relations at the London School of Economics, by Mo Abbas and Danielle Hamamdijan. So this is NBC News, and these two, Mo and Danielle, so take it with a grain of salt since so much fake news comes out of there, but sounded kosher to me, which is almost more shocking. Mr. Abbas is a multimedia producer for NBC News, and Ms. Hamamdijan, no offense, sorry, it's hard to pronounce, is an NBC foreign correspondent, both in London. Hamadamja was formerly CTV's UK correspondent up until getting caught up in layoffs at Bell Media in June 2023. Cairo-born, LA, Montreal-raised, UK-based, her ex-bio says. So maybe she isn't part of the old problem and the new solution. Anyway, Arab governments that for decades have been fierce advocates for the Palestinian cause are now facing criticism for their timid response to the extreme suffering in Gaza caused by Israel's war, risking a dangerous rift with their increasingly restive citizens. As death from starvation and Israeli bombardment have mounted, Palestinians, their supporters, and some analysts have directed their anger toward Arab rulers in the region whom they perceive as being too passive and quiet. They point to countries outside the Middle East who have publicly criticized Israel and tried to stop it from expanding its military operations in Gaza. Where are the Arabs? The Arabs are napping. The Arabs are nowhere to be seen. The Arabs, and I'm talking about the Arab rulers, have buried their heads in the sand, said Fawaz Gerges, professor of international relations at the London School of Economics. The situation in Gaza has become even more dire as Palestinians risk their lives to get food. An aid distribution system implemented by the U.S. and the Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has led to hundreds more Palestinians being killed, often by Israeli soldiers. Wafa Eid, a Palestinian woman in Gaza, told NBC News last month that she had walked several miles to a GHF aid distribution site on July 24th, a day set aside only for women. She and two other witnesses said they were shot at, pepper sprayed, and tear gassed. Arab states, "Why don't you help us? We don't want the Americans," Iyad said. Two women were killed on their way to the site, a Gaza health official said. The GHF said at the time that there were no incidents at the site itself. The Israeli Defense Forces said that troops operating in the Rafah area identified suspects who approached them posing a threat to the troops and fired warning shots. It was not aware of casualties, and the shots were fired hundreds of meters away from the GHF site before its opening hours, it said. Interesting. Israel also denied there is starvation in Gaza, contradicting medics in the Palestinian enclave, global aid groups, and even a close ally, President Donald Trump. Some Arab leaders dependent on American aid and security guarantees are wary of angering the U.S. and Israel and see little strategic advantage in helping Palestinians, whom they may even seem as a threat, experts say. I'd like to know who those experts were. Arab states have participated in airdrops of aid and food convoys into Gaza. Have they? But Palestinians and aid groups say it's nowhere near enough to ward off a looming famine. Egypt and Qatar have also mediated talks among Israel, the U.S., and Hamas, but they have not led to an end to the conflict. Well, there are 50 hostages still hidden somewhere. Several Latin American states, along with Spain, Ireland, and Norway, have blasted Israel for its conduct in Gaza and threatened sanctions or a downgrade of diplomatic ties. I wonder where they're getting their information from. And in recent weeks, longtime Israeli allies like France and Australia have pledged to officially recognize Palestine, a move decried by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government. It will never happen. In late 2023, South Africa filed a case with the United Nations top court alleging that Israel was committing genocide in Gaza in 2023. Arab states have been much less vocal, with Egypt and Jordan even cracking down on pro-Palestinian protests and activism, fearing they could turn against the country's leaders, experts say, and they would know. Palestine resonates deeply in the Arab imagination, Gerges said. Apparently not. Palestine reminds Arabs of the subservience of their governments. Palestine reminds Arabs of the hegemony and domination and the continuing colonialism and imperialism of the West. Oh, how lovely. He added, "I would say that Gaza, the tragedy of Gaza, the destruction of Gaza, could really serve as a time bomb that implodes the Arab political order from within." The legendary Arab Street that we're always worried about, but never comes out. Polling between October 7th, 2023, before October 7th, 2023, showed that most Arab citizens rejected normalizing ties with Israel. A sentiment subsequent surveys show has only deepened since. They can't do anything to change minds. A survey published in June by pollster Arab Barometer found that support for such a move has collapsed, not exceeding 13% in the 7 countries surveyed. The Egyptian and Jordanian embassy in the U.S., along with the 6-nation Gulf Cooperation Council, did not immediately respond to requests for comments on the story. Egypt and Jordan, even with the crackdown, have allowed limited protest, though hundreds of activities Hundreds of activists have also been arrested, according to Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. The Gulf states rarely allow protests, but they have largely maintained diplomatic and trade links with Israel throughout its devastating offensive in the Gaza Strip, and began after the Hamas-led October 7, 2023 terrorist attacks in which some 1,200 were killed and 250 taken hostage. Health officials in Gaza say that more than 61,000 Palestinians, most of them women and children, have been killed in the ensuing war. Many academics, including Israeli scholars, have in recent months joined rights groups in condemning Israel's operations in Gaza as genocide, a charge Israel vehemently denies, especially since they are delivering food. How do you have a genocide if you're feeding people? Despite the genocide in the middle of the genocide, this extraordinary depravity that we see in Gaza, not a single Arab state that has relations with Israel has cut relations with Israel. Interesting. Although other states in other parts of the world have, said Usama Makdisi, professor of history and chancellor chair at the University of California, Berkeley. So far away. The United Arab Emirates and Bahrain were among the Arab states that signed the U.S. brokered Abraham Accords in 2020, paving the way for economic and diplomatic ties with Israel. Saudi Arabia has been set to follow, but the Gaza conflict put those plans on hold. Oh, almost as if that was the intended consequences. For Gulf Arab states, better ties with Israel have little to do with public attitudes and more to do with realpolitik, expert says, which means money. The Gulf states have several U.S. military bases that analysts say help shield them from regional rival Iran and also help maintain Western access to the region's vast energy supplies. Access to Israel's vibrant tech sector has also been a draw for some Arab states who have used its surveillance technology to stifle dissent, experts and rights groups say. Those regimes in the Arab world that depend on the U.S. for their security, they don't depend on their legitimacy vis-a-vis their own people. They depend on U.S. protection, U.S. military bases, Makdisi said. A lot of truth in there, actually. Houthi rebels who control large parts of Yemen have fired missiles and drones at Israel and ships in the region in what they say is an attempt to end Israelis' offensive in Gaza, but Yemen is alone among Arab states in pressuring Israel's military. Arab countries could apply economic pressure through oil embargoes or restricting access to the Suez Canal and Arab airspaces, but experts say such moves are unlikely. You think? Cut off the money supply? Not likely. Arab countries once supplied Palestinian militant groups with weapons, funding, and bases from which to attack Israel and concrete to create tunnels underneath Israel, but such solidarity proved costly and dangerous. Hence, they stopped. In Jordan, tensions between Palestinian militants and the ruling monarchy exploded into the Black September Civil War in 1970, leading to the militants' eventual expulsion and relocation to Lebanon. How'd that work out for them? Or Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. He got assassinated by them. The presence of the Palestinian Liberation Organization in Lebanon in the 1970s exacerbated the country's civil war and triggered an Israeli invasion in 1982 to target Palestinian terrorists. More recently, Israel invaded Lebanon last year, heavily bombing southern Beirut in an offensive against the Hezbollah militant group, which had been firing rockets at Israel in solidarity with Hamas, constantly and nonstop. Hezbollah, emptying out the city, by the way. Hezbollah and Hamas are backed by Iran, which has led some Arab states to distance themselves from both groups. Interesting. For Ryan Crocker, former U.S. ambassador to Iraq, Lebanon, and Kuwait, lukewarm Arab support for the Palestinian cause is less about U.S. and Israeli pressure and more about self-preservation. The Palestinians, both the cause, the PLO, and the population in the Jordanian and Lebanese examples have both been seen as a threat to the rule of these Arab regimes, Crocker told NBC News. The U.S. and Israel had floated plans for Arab countries to accept tens of thousands of Gaza refugees, but the idea was flatly rejected, with those Arab countries fearing both renewed Palestinian militancy and accusations of aiding ethnic cleansing, experts say. Crocker compared Palestinians to the Kurds, another stateless group in the Middle East. There's a saying among the Kurds, who are scattered between Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, that they have no friends but the mountains, he said. Well, the Palestinians don't even have the mountains. That is it for this episode. Thank you, Bobby and Allie Anderson, for coming on here and telling us the truth in this cloud war, now called international media, like CNN Turkey, where you will never get the story, just a story they want you to hear. Go on TikTok and see all the videos of dying kids, screaming women, and crying babies, and starvation, and how they just start laughing when they can't help it, proving it's a big act and a tragedy of human conscience. This is goodbye for now. I'm your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com. See y'all next time. Peace in our time, and definitely glory to God.
Yeah, I've been dreaming of the wild, wild plains, walking where the pine trees dance.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of heartlandjournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.